Good morning, folks. The real Captain Kirk here, live from Weather Trends 360 studio here in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. It is the 7th October, Monday morning. A lot to talk about here today. I thought we'd actually talk a little bit about how we help Fortune 500 companies with year-ahead weather. I know I said year ahead. Talk about a big snowstorm, drought, 2-week outlook, and, of course, a dancing Angelina here at the end. So this chart here on the left, again, kind of an example of how we use our power of 1 degree technology. Basically, what this is on the left here is just year-over-year temperature trends for the nation as a whole. So again, the good news is this week ending October 12th here, we're in a blue bar down, meaning about a degree colder. The power of 1 degree is this quantification of how 1 degree of change in temperature influences seasonal sales. So these are just some of the, we've done this about 10,000 times, but we'll pick on coats, for example, because it is getting into thinking about coat season. The good news, again, this week is about a degree colder. Every degree colder is about a 5% increase in coat sales. Now, there's a downside. Every degree warmer, there's a decrease in coat sales. So unfortunately, looking at the trend chart here on the left, you see a down 20% for coats mid-October, late October down 15, maybe a bright spot very late October into early November, +2, but then some big downward trends as we get into mid-November. Really, the next good shot is probably going to be right around Christmas. So a big Christmas surge for coat sales. They'll be on major discount, so if you want to wait and buy that coat, probably won't need it too much until we get around the Christmas holidays. So again, about a 35% increase as we get toward Christmas. If we decide every now and then we decide to turn this onto something different and look at the airline traffic delays here at Philadelphia International Airport, and I was kind of shocked to see about an 89% correlation to rainfall. So we call this the power of 1 inch of rain. Every 1 inch more rainfall in Philly, there's about a 2.8% increase in annual flight delays. Correlation was about 89%. So again, it's a very strong, kind of intuitive common sense, but sometimes you don't realize just the strength of the relationship until you look at it. For example, 2011 was one of the wettest years on record in Philadelphia, and flight delays jumped 40%, followed by 2012, which was one of the driest, and down 36% for flight delays. You see then we had the big 2013 wet period, up 53% for flight days. Then a few years of drier weather, and the flight delays decreased. And then here recently in 2018, another one of the second wettest on record, 144% increase in flight delays. So again, thought it was kind of interesting. Unfortunately, too many of companies plan off last year, and the weather's never the same. We all kind of know that, but unfortunately, big Fortune 500 companies tend to look at last year's weather and last year's sales to predict next year's sales. So this is March, for example. Our March 2020 outlook shows a year more like 12 and 15. Probably not as good as 12. That was record shattering. But again, this is how we help big businesses quantify the weather a year ahead. And everyone says year ahead weather is impossible. And it is using traditional meteorology and physics. That is impossible to go out beyond a couple weeks. Statistics and climate cycles, a very different approach. So if we look at this chart here, the bars are the year ahead forecast, the dotted line's actual. So we're trending about 87% over the last 6 quarters. This forecast is actually more accurate than a short-range week 2 forecast, the 7 to 14-day forecast. Here's preset for the U.S. Again, pretty good at capturing those really dry periods. We've had a really dry stretch here in July, August, September nationally, driest in 14 years. And again, the year-ahead forecast did very well. So I always say statistics and climate cycles will trump physics and meteorology every time. Again, this is down to every city on Earth, 32 million locations. So New York City trending at about 85% on temps and 80% on preset. So again, does well. The other thing we like to compare ourselves to is the NOAA folks. They put out their monthly outlook, and so the orange line's their height key skill score, if you will, method they like to use to track their accuracy, and the blue line is our year-ahead forecast. We joke they give us a year-ahead start, and we still beat them about 83% of the time. So again, statistics and cycles are much more predictable than traditional meteorology. And folks still say is what we do is impossible, then we just point to the couple thousand clients that say otherwise. So again, we work with some of America's most successful admired companies. Enough for the commercial here. We'll jump to the snowstorm here potential. This is the 6-day snowfall outlook, so nothing on the map here today. Tuesday, you start to see signs of in Montana, and big explosion of snowfall there again, where they already had the snowiest September in a couple decades here. So another big snowstorm moving through Montana. This one, however, is going to have some legs and move into the plains, the northern plains, with a good 8 to 10 plus inches in spots in the Dakotas. This may be a bit overdone on the eastern end of this, southeastern end. I'm not sure Nebraska's going to get quite that much. This will be a heavy wet snow, 35 to 40 degree type snowstorm. Again, so we'll see for sure parts of the eastern Dakotas, western Minnesota will certainly get some snow. So we'll run through these one more time. Again, you can see this snowstorm as it heads midweek, late week into the upper plains. If we look here at the snowfall trends here for this week on a national scale going back to 1986, this is just a snowfall index, and it shows you it's off the scale, about 210 inches on a national index basis. So that makes it the snowiest in many, many decades here for this week again, and all of that's confined to the Rockies and the Plains. The other thing that's kind of off the scale here right now is just the dry conditions, for sure from Texas into the Northeast. Driest in 12 years nationally. This week last year, actually this is for 1 September through 6 October, so the last 6 weeks. Fall last year was, again, number one wettest off the charts. Again, this year, driest in 12. So pretty big differences here year over year. Rainfall in the plains and the upper Midwest is still pretty heavy. So, again, there's still some rain to contend with there. We look at this week, 7 through 13 October. Again, we're looking at coldest in 7 years. A lot of that's in the western half of the country. Still mild on the East Coast relative to averages. Seventh coldest in 30 years nationally. The little map inset bottom left there is actually the year-over-year temperature trend. So even though it's warmer than average here on the East Coast, it's still much, much colder than last year. So that's a plus, again, for those folks trying to sell coats and gloves and mittens and things that we want to maybe buy as the weather gets colder. Map on the left shows we're drier than last year, but still 11th wettest in 30 years. Again, snowfall's, again, off the scale here, most in 30 years and 707% above average on a national index basis. Jumping ahead here to next week, 14 through 20 October, a little warmer than last year. Again, kind of a warming trend. Still cold in the north, and certainly where they had that snowpack up probably in the Dakotas and Minnesota will certainly be below normal. Again, but nationally warmer than last year, 7th warmest in 30. Wettest in 5, 12th wettest in 30 years, above average nationally. And snowfall, again, will be way below average. So not much snow to contend with here, we don't believe, next week. Looking at these on a national scale, global scale actually here, 7 through 20 October, aggregating the 2-week period. Again, you see the cold over the 2-week period, pretty much the Northwest, northern Rockies, cold in extreme northern Russia. But again, much of the world's on the warmer side here as we look at the front half of October here. So with that, folks, I thought I'd end with the little dancing Angelina, and we'll be back here this time next week. Have a great week.